All right, why don't you go and have a seat? It's kind of weird clapping for somebody you don't know. You don't even know if it's going to be good or not, right? Like, we should do that afterwards. Like, that was pretty good, you know? Before you're like, I'm hoping. This is Pastor Mark's bold faith right now, you know? It's believing it's going to be good. What an honor to be here, especially to be able to speak to pastors and leaders. You know, I grew up, my great-grandfather was a pastor. Both grandparents were pastors. My dad was a pastor. My uncle was a pastor. I grew up enough in church, you know how this is when missionaries come in and they told you, like, don't tell God what you don't want to do because he's going to make you do it. And so I grew up telling God, like, please make me a pastor. Please make me a pastor. Please make. And then he made me a pastor. And I was thinking, like, reverse psychology does not work on God. You know, it was like, did everything I could to try to not let it happen, but it still happened. And coming in here is awesome to be able to be with you because I know the weight of it. I know the challenges of it. We did just pioneer with Pastor Mark and Darlene. We pastored Hope You See Nashville, and we launched that. It was last week was 6 years, and interesting enough, you know, my friends started calling me after year 3, saying, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I think so," you know, and they're like, "Well, usually year 3 is when." I was like, Quit telling us those statistics, you know? And usually year 3 is when you give up, you know? And I was like, I feel guilty because I feel great, you know? It's like one of the best things I've ever done. So then year 4, they called and they're kind of surprised. They're like, "Are you still doing that?" You're like, "Yes, I'm still doing this. I don't plan on stopping," you know? And but just to be able to be here with you, it's an honor. Thank you, Pastor Mark, for the invite. And getting here was very difficult. I don't know about you, if you've ever gone through customs or not, but I actually got to the airport. I preached Sunday morning. My wife, I'd had to do one of those pastor things where at the end we did a song so I could sneak out because I'm the person who talks to everyone. My wife is like, look down when you walk out of here. And I was like, I can't, you know? So she's holding me by the hand and I'm like this, you know? And then all of a sudden I look up, I was like, oh, I got to talk, you know, like, and so we did that Sunday and I got out and we drove to the airport, got there with an hour and a half time, which should have been fine. And I got up to the counter and my visa was not connected to my passport. So they were like, oh, you got to get that fixed, but you got a few minutes. So I worked on it. Well, I was going to work on it, but then I realized I left my phone in my wife's car, and she drove away with it. So my wife had to turn around, get back to the airport. By the time she got back I'm just going to tell you just how exciting the trip here was. And she got back with my phone. Then I had to get on. I had to make sure my visa was connected to my passport. I got up to the desk, and she was like, oh, you missed the luggage cutoff by 1 minute. So we can't let you on the plane now. And to be honest with you just got done preaching. I'm full of faith, and then I'm full of not faith. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So the enemy's already fighting me, you know, and I called my wife right away, and she was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, they're going to try to get me on another flight. So she's like, I can get you on another flight, but you'll have to go to Atlanta, and if anybody's ever been to Atlanta, it's an armpit. So when you get to Atlanta, we're praying for it because God needs armpits too, you know. There's all parts of the body, like parts of the body. Some of you are a hand, some of you are a foot, some of you are a butt. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. I said armpit, like whatever. Not you, but your people. And so then I have to fly to Atlanta, but I have to run to my next flight because your next flight. And I don't know if I look like I'm a runner, but I'm not, surprisingly. And I'm more of a fast waddler. And so I quickly waddled to the next place and just barely made the flight. I got on the flight and I was like, okay, like I'm feeling okay. I was like, slow down a little bit. You're going to be okay. I land in LA. I have to waddle fast to that flight. I get there and the guy looks at me and he's like, this says you already flew out. I'm right here, you awesome person, you know? And he was like, well, I get that, but this says, I don't care what that says. I have a ticket on my phone. And he's like, yeah, we're gonna have to look at it. So the entire plane boards, and I don't. And I'm standing there last minute, and he was like, hey, we got you on, but you did get a global upgrade, so you get a lay down seat. And I was thinking like, you know what? God's good, right? So I'm glad I didn't say anything bad about that person because the Lord would have really convicted me. And it's hard because then I get in this nice lay down seat. I don't get those. I don't know about, you know, I just don't live at that level. So I get in this seat, and my wife texts me. She's like, how is it? And I'm thinking like, I want to complain to her because it's really frustrating, but I'm I'm in a lay down seat. And I can't really say anything bad. And so I was like, it's been wonderful. And so then I that 15-hour flight here, which is just joy. And I get here, I get out, and I go down, and I go to wait for my baggage, and it's gone around for 20 minutes. And then I hear, Mr. Smith, on LA flight 41, we need you to come to the desk. Okay, I'm pretty sure. There's a lot of Smiths in the world, so I'm praying it's not me. And I went up and I was like, I'm a Mr. Smith, I'm one of them. And she was like, can I see your baggage thing? So I showed her, she's like, your baggage is still in LA. You know what? That's awesome. So I texted my wife and I was like, my bags are in LA. And she's like, what are you gonna do? I was like, I don't know, they don't make them like me in Australia. I don't see big people. I feel like you're really little. And so then I'm thinking like, even a double extra large here isn't a true double extra large, When I put it on, it's like fat man in a little coat kind of thing. And it's like, what's happening, And the weird thing is I get out and is Luke in here? Or is he? Yeah, this is great. So Luke's like, I'm gonna take you to buy some clothes. Well, I don't know about you, but my least favorite thing in the world is going to buy clothes. I don't go buy clothes with my wife. And now I'm gonna be out with another dude walking around buying clothes. And luckily, Luke's really great at it. If you ever need help, go to Luke. He's really good at it. So he was like, we're gonna find you a store that has things for you. And he said it in a really nice way. And you do have a couple of them because you have rugby players. And so I went in, he helped me, and it was great. And I'm not wearing that now. I am wearing the underwear he bought me, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, he felt really weird about that part, but I was like, well, I still gotta have them, and so you gotta buy the whole thing. But as a pastor, I knew I would handle it well, so I feel blessed to be here. I feel blessed to fly here. And do you ever feel like, when you think about hard things, you think you're gonna go through it a certain way, and you usually think better of yourself than you are, And I don't know about you, I'll watch like a military film, and I'll see these guys getting like, when they're they're looking for their family or something, and they're torturing them, and they're like pulling out fingernails and stuff, and I'm sitting there watching like, you know what? I would do that for my family, And then they're like doing bad, like things to and you're thinking like, I love my family. Like I would do that. Like I feel like I'm a man enough that I'm gonna go through the torture thing. And then a couple weeks ago, I went to the dentist. And I had a jawbone exposed, and the dentist touched my jawbone, and I thought, my family's dead. I will not protect them. I will give them up. If they even go towards my mouth, I'm like, never mind, they're in the cellar. There's a board over it, I'll move it for you. And I'm like, I'm sorry guys, they were going for my mouth. I don't know what you want me to do. And I just realized I'm not as strong as I thought I was. And I kind of do that with Bible characters a little bit too, and it's hard because you feel like you're gonna be them, and we wanna live up to them. And I was reading through some Bible characters, and I thought maybe this would kind of be fun because, as we do this a lot, and you preach a lot, you hear sermons a lot of times we don't go revisit stories. And I realized I was talking to a young girl, and it's hard because since we lost Sunday school, as I was talking to this young girl, I was talking about Samson, and she was like, who's Samson? I was like, what? You don't know who Samson is? You realize we have started preaching concepts, and we've lost the power of story, And I want to encourage you in that, because a lot of these young people, they don't know the stories. And a lot of the things that we want to even talk about in worship and stuff, there are stories in the Bible that should form how we process the things of God. And remember, when I'm reading through the Old Testament, I'm realizing like these people didn't all have their own Bibles. A lot of times, when we're talking about even songs and things that we use, songs are incredible powerful tools even for information. Even if I ask you right now to give me a letter in the alphabet, you're probably going to sing to get to it, because you learned it through a song. And you got the song of Moses, you got the song of Mary, you got the song of Miriam. Like, they wrote songs to get ideas and theologies in them. These songs weren't just to sing to God, they were to sing about what God brought them through and the history of God in their lives. And so there's a very natural thing to storytelling that they understood that we've kind of lost. And so I want to go through a story with you today because with everything going on in our world and everything going on in our churches, I realize there are so many patterns that we can look back and look to examples of how did they handle this. And I want to go to 1 Kings, and this is I'm going to actually just read one verse from chapter 17. This is in 1 Kings chapter 17, and this is talking about Elijah. And this says, chapter 17, verse 1, "Now Elijah, who was from Tishbe in Gilead, told King Ahab, 'As surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, the God I serve, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years until I give the word.'" And this is interesting because if you read through 1 Kings, most of the time when it starts talking about a person, it goes through an entire genealogy. It'll go through 17 different generations just to tell you how they got on the planet, But with this one, there's really almost like no introduction. That's it. No genealogy, no origin story, no priestly background. In a book that's filled with royal lineages and prophetic backstories, Elijah just shows up. And it's interesting because he shows up and it seems like he's just sent straight from God. His authority isn't in a position, no pedigree, no preparation, but it comes from proximity. He's not introduced by what he comes from, he's introduced by what he carries. The name Elijah, Elihu, means "my God is Yahweh." That's his entire identity. So his name itself is a prophetic declaration against Baal worship. So when we're getting into this next part, when he starts actually going after the idols and going after the other god, you have to recognize this isn't just some random guy who's showing up. Even though there's no real lineage, the important part about this guy is identified by God is Yahweh. And it's important for us to recognize that when God needs a reformer, he doesn't look for the most visible, he looks for the most yielded. It's his entire identity. So before Elijah was the prophet of fire, he was a man of prayer. Before he called down fire, he first called down a drought. This is hard because I love the story that we're about to talk about when it gets to the fire, but you have to recognize that many of us, we preach, we talk, but most of it, unfortunately, comes from a position of self-preservation. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to preach to try to get ourselves to preserve a certain way of life. I know in America, a lot of people, when they vote, they purely vote so their gas prices won't go up. They're not even voting on righteous things. A lot of times, they're not even voting on that stuff. They want to know what's going to make my life more comfortable. And the hard thing about this is what God is doing in this day and age. I hear all kinds of pastor friends, leaders, I hear them talking, and they're almost complaining about the condition of the world, and they're wanting it to get better. But here's Elijah, knowing the condition of the world, and the very first thing that does when he steps on the scene is he steps in, and they're like, "Who's this guy?" He's like, "I'm Elijah. I'm calling a drought." Like, that's the first thing you talk about? The first thing isn't, "I'm going to talk to you about breaking off these chains, getting you out of this slavery. We're going to set you free." The first thing Elijah does is he shows up and he says, "I'm about to speak and there's not going to be any more rain." You know what happens then? Elijah has to go through a time of drought. Elijah puts himself in a position where we're about to encounter Elijah 3 years later. We're going to encounter a man who actually went through the drought that he proclaimed is going to happen. And you have to recognize that sometimes in our churches, we have to be willing to call some hard things out to reveal some things about ourselves. Could Elijah just have called down fire at that point? Yeah, but that's not what happened. What happened was there was a time of drought because there was a time of dividing. And there was a time that was going to be a realization where everyone's at now. And I believe that's a point where we're at. I believe that God is doing some really radical things, but he's actually removed some of the things that we thought were going to be our survival. And so in this, you can't just continue to get yourself to survive a little longer. You have to recognize sometimes we have to be the ones that tell God we're willing to live through a drought. If that's what it's going to take to get people to turn, we're willing to do what it takes, Lord. And if you go in with that mentality, then you're going to recognize God is good. God is still faithful. He'll still provide. You know what he did for Elijah? He sent a bird to feed him. Now, for me, that's probably a poor choice because I probably would have eaten the bird. And but that's a whole nother story. You know, it's like, oh, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And God's like, don't eat that. Oh, you stinker. And, but he puts him by a brook. You know, he feeds him. There's a whole story about him going to the widow, and there's things that are getting written in the time of drought. There's miracles that are happening that are in the time of drought. You're still supposed to be a person of faith, but some of you have focused on the drought, and some of you have focused and you're like, oh, I'm in such a desert time. Well, you know what? God says he's going to put streams in the desert. Maybe the reason you're there is you're the stream. And there's no stream because you're so focused on the desert, you stopped opening your mouth. And now all you're doing is talking about the desert, how hard it is in our country. Oh, our country's so bad. Our country's so bad. It's like, maybe that's the reason you're here. He's waiting for somebody that's going to stand up. Jesus says this, those who believe in me will have rivers of living water pouring from their bellies. It's a desert. Release the stream. Be the stream. In this moment, I won't get into this story, but Elijah becomes a stream for a widow. It doesn't mean miracles stopped and all this stuff. No, God's still working miracles. Obadiah, who he runs into in chapter 18, had served the Lord faithfully, had rescued some of the prophets who were going to be killed. There's miracles happening even in the droughts. Don't let your little bubble of things you're not seeing start to dictate your view of if God is doing anything or not. God is doing a miracle working power thing in our earth. And we still get to be a part of it even in times of drought. Don't fear the drought. So in chapter 18, I'm going to move on. It's been 3 years. He ends up encountering Obadiah. I'm going to get through this part really fast. Obadiah is worried because Elijah says, go tell King Ahab I'm here. Obadiah says, not a chance, because if I do, he's going to kill me because he's been looking everywhere for you. And Elijah says, as soon as I go tell him, God's going to take you away somewhere, and then I'm going to look like an idiot, you know? But he goes and tells him, and King Ahab shows up. And this is so important for our culture where we're at right now. Listen to what happens in chapter 18, verse 21. Verse 16. Verse 16. So Obadiah went to tell Ahab that Elijah had come, and Ahab went out to meet Elijah. Listen to what Ahab says. When Ahab saw him, he exclaimed, so is it really you troublemaker of Israel? I don't know about you, but I have a lot of people, as we're moving around the earth right now, that are telling Christians, it's your fault we're in this pot. You're the problem. And it's hard sometimes because what they're doing is they're projecting the drought on us, but we didn't cause the drought, we just announced it. And what happens is you have to be careful because you're going to get caught up in something that I like to call, I wrote this down, Elijah didn't call the drought, he announced it, but Ahab's guilt made him defensive. In times of drought, true leaders get misidentified as the problem, but drought reveals who carries authority to speak rain. Today's world, we're hearing the same accusations. You Christians are the problem, you're too extreme, you're too divisive, you're too old-fashioned. And the problem is the spirit of Ahab always blames prophetic voices for the drought they were sent to confront. Do not internalize blame culture. As soon as it starts coming at you, people start to internalize it. What happens then, in that moment, you become afraid of being misunderstood, so you stop saying what needs to be said. Prophetic leaders aren't meant to be popular, they're meant to be faithful. And in this moment, Elijah looks at Ahab And he makes this statement, I have made no trouble for Israel, Elijah replied. You and your family are the troublemakers, for you have refused to obey the commands of the Lord and have worshiped the images of Baal instead. Now summon all Israel to join me at Mount Carmel, along with the 400 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who are supported by Jezebel. When he gets there, he brings the people together and the prophets of Baal, and he says this, I am the only prophet of the Lord who is left, but Baal has 450. No, let me rewrite for that. Sorry, this is verse 21. Then Elijah stood in front of them and said, how much longer will you waver, hobbling between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him. But the people were completely silent. It's hard because the people's silence says everything. They didn't reject God, they just wanted both. The danger of this generation is mixture. You have to understand that. Because when we talk about worship, we get caught up in these arguments of the music and things like that, but music is one of the most powerful weapons and tools you'll ever experience. So let's not diminish the power of music, but let's also not worship it. I always say, even master builders, they keep their tools in good condition, but none of them sleep with them. If you sleep with a tool, you're a weirdo. That's weird. You're not in love with the tools. You're not in love with the weapons, but you do keep them sharp. You do keep them in good condition. And when we talk about the word worship means the worth-revealing nature of a people towards God. It means worth-ship. And our responsibility is to reveal the worth of God. That's why it's interesting, one of the most powerful things you can do in worship is forgive somebody. You know why? Why can't he forgive you until you forgive someone else? Because you are the worth revealer of God, and if you can't forgive, you reveal, he doesn't forgive. You're the worth revealing aspect of God on the earth. And what Elijah is frustrated with here is you can't be split because you're revealing that he's not the one and only true God. You're revealing something wicked here that says we're going to go here when it feels good. We're going to go here when it feels good. When I feel like I need protected and this guy's not doing it, I'm going to go over here. And you find that a lot of other countries. When I went to Uganda, we started talking about worship. I asked, what are those kids running around with those little bands on? And these are the Christians. And they're like, oh, those are witchcraft bands. Like, what? They ward off witchcraft because they wanted a backup plan. Everybody wants a backup plan. If God doesn't work, what am I going to do? And what Elijah does is he says there can be no more mixture. He says you've hobbled, you've wavered between two opinions. And our churches have been so full of mixture. We want revival, but we want it on our own terms. We want fire, but we don't want to sacrifice. We want God to move, but don't mess with my system. Don't mess with my schedule. Don't mess with my comfort zone. Elijah's call was not to make the people feel better. It was to make them choose. Your role is not to entertain indecision. It's to confront it. The next move of God won't come from clever language, but from courageous and brave leadership. Bold leadership. It's time to call people back to clarity, conviction, and consecration. This generation, this younger generation, wants something real. They don't want to play games. One of the reasons they struggle with it is because they were raised with parents who told them how important church and God was, but they didn't give anything in church. They didn't make a sound in church. They went to church. They don't raise their hands. Everything was an argument to even get to church. We come into church. They're drinking a coffee through the whole thing. And then the dads will tell them, well, it's not really my personality to sing or to make noise. And then they go home and they watch them at home. And they watch them watch a football game. They watch them in sports. And they see them in real time, in real life, and they see them give money to everything else but to the church. They see them give time to everything else but to the church. They see them give words and energy and volume to everything else but the church. At church, they just show up. And then they tell the kids, God's so important to us. But at home, they prove he's not. I'm not opposed to you loving football. Well, I don't know football. Soccer, I don't know what you call it. Rugby. If I bring up your team, Pastor Mark jokes about it, there's volume in here, right? I'm not afraid of that. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem that they do it at the games. I don't have a problem they go crazy. My problem is when they get into church, all of a sudden they shut down and they got nothing to give, and they revealed the worth of football. They revealed the worth of rugby, and we're going to talk about worship like it's just songs. This is so powerful because when we come in to sing, this is the only time you're going to lay down your own ideas, your own personality, your own song, your own voice, your own melody, and you're going to sing with everybody the same words, and it's probably the only time in an entire week you will become one voice with the people. Preaching is powerful. I don't want worship without the preaching of God. But worship isn't your setup for your preaching. That's ridiculous. That's a mixture that says what I give to them is not as important as what comes from them. And we've taught at church, I call it in the Western culture, shut up, sit down, memorize, repeat. That's the education model. If you'll sit in a room and you'll be really quiet and you'll memorize everything I say and you'll repeat it, you get an A on the test. And then they come into church and we give that to them. So as pastors, I got a bunch of people who can quote scriptures that I've told them. They can even quote the stories that I told them. They'll tell the stories like they were doing them. I was in a foyer listening to somebody tell one of my stories, and he was telling it better than I tell it, and this guy was excited like he did it. And we got churches of people, full of people who think they've done something, but we've not put any responsibility on them, and then we want to take worship from them, short that time, get them out of here a little bit sooner. We don't need them doing as much. And you want more people like that? God, give us more people. For what? To do what the people in there are already doing? Listen to you? And repeat you? Sorry, I'm going home in a week, so don't worry about it. It's a challenge, right? But this is the dividing line. You're hobbling. No more hobbling and wavering. Let's choose. So then he looks at the prophets of Baal. You know this story. He tells the prophets of Baal, hey, you do your thing, we're going to watch you. And let's see what happens. So the prophets of Baal, they work harder, they cut themselves, they shout louder, but heaven stays silent. And sometimes in church, listen, it's not about us just getting more volume. You can have volume and no heart. But it's very hard to have heart and no volume. Striving produces noise, but surrender invites fire. This is the image of the modern church. We've mastered technique, but lost authority. We've perfected the program, but forgotten the presence. We built performance, but we lost the power. It's not excellence that God opposes, it's idolatry. The difference, excellence points to God, idolatry replaces him. And Paul told Timothy this is going to happen in the last days. They will have a form of godliness, but they will deny the power. So pastor, remember, the fire doesn't fall on effort, it falls on obedience. My question for you is, have you stopped asking God what he likes? Sometimes we get into our patterns and we do things, and I asked the Lord, I said, do you even like what we're doing on Sundays anymore? And I felt the Lord say, no, I want you to change some things. I said, what do you want? He said, I want them in homes too. I said, well, we'll do life groups. And he's like, no, I want them in homes on a Sunday. I was like, well, you told me to start a church and gather them. So I'm praying. I don't even get a word. I don't even know what to do. So I just said, okay, we're going to start the last Sunday of every month. Everyone's going into a home. And I had my friends tell me, bro, do not do that. And I'm not telling you to do that. This has to be the Lord telling you to do something. This isn't me telling everybody. This is not the new model. This is not me telling you a model. I'm telling you, I don't even know if it was about the homes. I think the Lord was just trying to find out if I'm obedient, because Moses goes to a rock and he strikes it. The Lord says, strike it and water will come out. And he strikes it and water comes out. Later on, God says, speak to the rock, but Moses still struck it because it's easier for us to try to find a pattern where we can get water. And you know what? The problem is, what I would love about God is when he struck it the second time, water didn't come out to prove that it doesn't work. The problem is he still let water come out. So some of you think you're doing it right because water's still coming out, but you're not going to get into the promised land because you're not listening anymore. You can still get water to flow in a room, but that doesn't mean anything's happening. The woman with the issue of blood touched Jesus, but when Jesus stopped and said, "Who just touched me?" the disciples laughed because they go, "We all just touched you." He goes, "Yeah, but someone touched me with faith." You can bump into Jesus and not get anything from him. Don't think because you're bumping into Jesus and he's in the room that anything is still happening. There still has to be an order to it. And for us, we don't want to be those people who actually give lip service. He tells the Pharisees, "You're a people who praise me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. Your worship of me is in vain, because it's just rules taught by men. For you have held on to the traditions of man, but let go of the commands of God." It's tough because in this room, I would say, I love watching you worship. I think it's so pure, and this isn't to be heavy your heart on you. It's really just to challenge your heart, because we all have to examine some certain things. But I've had people tell me, like, "Oh, I hate tradition." Well, I don't hate tradition. I hate tradition for tradition's sake. Traditions aren't bad in itself. But for people in here to say, "Oh, I'm not traditional," well, that's not totally true, because I watched you in prayer, and all of you bowed your head and closed your eyes when you prayed, but that's nowhere in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible. It's the most common thing in church. Let's all bow our head and close our eyes. Like that's normal? That's not in the Bible. Even when Jesus prays, he breaks the bread. It says, lifting his eyes towards heaven, he gave thanks. I mean, I'm at a restaurant, a lady's serving me food. She's not even a believer. She comes up, she's like, "Here's your food." You know, we're in the middle of prayer, you know. She's like, "Oh, sorry," you know. But the problem is we get into those patterns, and then the Bible does say, "Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing." And where's that? Are we challenging our people with that? Like, hey, you gotten comfortable because it fits your personality, but there's something that the Bible commands of us. And if we're gonna do bow your head and close your eyes, I'm not opposed to that, but don't exchange it and say, "Well, yeah, we love God," but you don't do God commands. Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Clap your hands, all ye people. Shout unto God with a voice of triumph. Like all those things, and it's like, well, that one doesn't really fit me, but this one does. This isn't in the Bible. At least find one that's in the Bible to do, you know? Okay, next part. Oh man, I gotta hurry. Okay. This is beautiful, right? Because Elijah even pokes fun at it, but then he says this, so beautiful. Then he gathers the people without the prophets of Baal. First time he puts it out to all of them, right? And they all just stay quiet. This time though, he gathers the people together. And this is what I want to encourage you in. Man. He pulls the people together, and I absolutely love this. He says this, "Come over here." They all crowded around him as he repaired the altar of the Lord. They all gathered around him as he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been torn down. Listen to what he does to do it. It says he took 12 stones, one to represent each of the tribes of Israel. You know what he did? He looked at all of them. Listen, this isn't a judgment against them, it's a judgment for them. This fire isn't to destroy them. When the fire falls on the day of Pentecost, it doesn't burn them up to make a new them, it transforms them. This fire is the dividing line, and some of us are so afraid of the fire. We're so afraid of what is going to happen, but we're in control of something that's not working. And this is what he does. He takes his 12 stones, and can you imagine the tribes around him? And he grabs one, and he was like, "Judah. Judah. Remember the calling of God on your life?" He takes it. Let's put it on the altar. He goes through every tribe. Can you imagine? He looks at one of them. He's like, "You remember the calling of God on your life? Take that. Put that on the altar." It's beautiful because he grabs the 12 stones, once for each tribe, and he rebuilds the identity of a people who had forgotten who they were. Don't get mad at people. This is an enemy that's tried to divide them from their identity. 2 Corinthians says this, "For the weapons we fight with are not of this world, but they're powerful to demolish strongholds, arguments, and pretensions that keep us from the knowledge of God." He wants them to think there are no options. Why are you mad at a people that were wavering between a dead altar and a dead God? We're going to invite people into churches that aren't full of life and fire and get mad at them for not changing? What are we offering them? We're going to get mad at some agenda in the world and be like, oh, they're such bad people. And it's like, yeah, but if they walked into their church, would there be any power for them to get set free? Or would they just go through the system and the emotions of everything we've learned to do in process, and maybe we wouldn't even accept them because our arms aren't wide enough for people that don't fit our thing. But when they walk into us, they should walk into people with wide arms but narrow lives. And our lives are lived for the kingdom of God and the purpose of God. And when we step in, we get to look at them in the face and we get to say, but this is who God called you to be. Some of gender confusion and all this kind of stuff. You know what? Why the enemy wants to confuse gender stuff? Because he's scared to death they'll produce another one of them that might give glory to God. The enemy is scared of their purpose. And you're just mad at their morality? You should be holding a stone up to them and say, God called you with a purpose. He divinely designed you. That's what leaders have to do again. We have to remind people who they are before they encounter what God is. We have to rebuild the altar of worship. We have to rebuild the altar of the word. We have to rebuild the altar of prayer. We have to rebuild the altar of identity, reminding our churches they are a holy nation and not a brand. The altar was not rebuilt with trend. It was rebuilt with truth. And then the last part of this is he does this. He says, now bring out 3 jars of water and pour it on. And all of you know the story, so I'm not going to go take time on it. But he pours all this water, and he pours it 4 times. There's 12 huge jars of water poured out, and it says it filled the entire trench, and it's drenched now. And it's interesting because I always heard people say that made it harder to start on fire. They wanted people to know this is a miracle. But I don't know about you. Like, I'm more of a critical thinker when I think of stories. You know, I see things in movies. You know my question? Where did they get that much water in a time of drought? I think what happened was they had some stored as a last-ditch effort of what happens if the drought doesn't end. And they held on to a little bit of survival. They thought, this is survival for us. And it's hard because some of you are holding on to things that you're thinking are survival, but all they're doing is elongating the slow death. You need to die faster. You got to pour it all out. Some of you, you tell God, you stand in a room, you say, you get it all. You're worthy of it all, but there's something still held back just in case it doesn't work. Some of you are in a church right now and you're thinking about getting out if it doesn't work, but the problem is you're basing your survival on in and out, not on calling. And in this, the only way fire falls is for you to dump it all out on the altar. Whatever we set back for our survival, guess what, God? If this doesn't work, we're just gonna die. This is it. This is the testing ground. And can you imagine the people dying of thirst and you're pouring the water out on that? This isn't just to make the fire harder, it was to make worship real. What are you holding back? Are you holding back time? Some of you are so dictated by time, and I understand it, you have multiple services and all this stuff, but man, wouldn't it be great for you to just release control one time and pour it all on the altar and see if God doesn't just make it a 3-hour service instead of 3 1-hour services? And it just flows in and out. You're so comfortable because you're comfortable with the time because you said it. How about comfort? How about control? Systems that work but don't burn. The drought ends when the pouring begins. Then Elijah stands up and he does this. He just turns his eyes. He says this beautiful prayer. O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, generational God, prove today that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant. Prove that I have done all this at your command. O Lord, answer me. Answer me. So these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have brought them back to yourself. The course correction that's happening right now where people are just, They're dying for real leaders. They're dying for people who are willing to stand in position and pour it all out. They want something real. But without the fire, nothing really shows a separation. The fire is meant to reveal the realness of God. And so he pours it out on the day of Pentecost, and he never stopped pouring it out. I understand the song Move of God, and I like the song. But the truth is, someday you're going to stand in heaven, and some of you have said, man, I can't wait to talk to David, and like, what was it like to take on Goliath? I want to talk to Moses. What was it like to split the Red Sea? And I think they're going to look at you and go, wait, before you do that, what was it like to have the Spirit of God inside of you? And for some of us, we're going to have a realization like, what? He's like, what did you do with the Spirit of God inside of you? The same Spirit? Woo! They didn't get it. They didn't get to have that. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you, and you complained your country's in a mess? You complain that work isn't great and the people are so hard to deal with? And here you are, the prophet of God, standing in a room. Quit just looking at your notes and look in the eyes of people again. Call them back to their first love. Just like you need to be called back to your first love, right? Just like I need to be called back to my first love. God woos us back and he pulls us in. And he was like, hey, lay all that other stuff down. Lay that stuff down. Let's do this together. And it's like, it's so scary though. It's so scary. He's like, trust me. I want the best for you. Trust me, I'll show up. Trust me. And some of you stop putting that out there of like, God, I'm going to put this out there. If you don't show up, we're in trouble. What we did was we started manufacturing things so if he didn't show up, we could still keep on going. But it doesn't work in Iraq, does it? Woo! Fire of God, fall in Iraq. Let a people who are standing in position for who you are, the prophets, to be able to stand in position and see the kingdom of God come and the will of God be done for a people who are willing to run into the middle of the mess. And I honor you today because you have run into the middle of the mess. But I want to remind you, as everybody else is crying out, where is this God of Elijah? I cry out, where are the Elijahs of God? Where are the Esthers of God? Where are the Josephs that are going to stand in position and they're going to do finances for a nation and they're never going to be turned because they're so committed to the kingdom of God? And while we're all asking God to move, he puts his Spirit inside of you and he goes, let's do it together. Where are the ones who will stand up and say, I'm going to lay it all down? The ones who don't have to beg, they don't have to hype, they just pray a prayer and heaven responds. Because revival isn't man-made, it's God-given. And fire falls on what's prepared, not what's performed. The true mark of leadership is not the ability to build altars, but to attract fire. Everyone's asking, where's the God of Elijah? I ask, where are the Elijahs of God? Where are the leaders who will rebuild the altars? Pour out the water, refuse to waver, stand alone if they must, call down fire instead of applause. We do not need better strategies. We need leaders who are set on fire for the kingdom of God. Leaders whose hearts are altars, whose pulpits are soaked in surrender, and whose ministries echo heaven's roar. This is not the hour for polished leadership. This is the hour for prophetic leadership. We need leaders who will stand when culture bows, pour out when systems preserve, or pour out what systems preserve, and call down what strategy can't produce. We need the fire of God. So let the fire, the God who answers by fire, let him come, for he is God. Let's stand. I so passionately felt this for you. Some of you in the room, it's hard because you question identity, but I love this thing of Elijah just shows up first time. It's like, who is this guy? He's like, he's this guy from this town. That's it. And I know some of you are burning with the word of God and stop holding it back. Stop trying to just read all the books to try to figure out how to find a new message, but it's now you become the message. You look around the room and you start to see like, God, what do I preach this week? And then start to dig in and ask God, what's causing them to waver? Is it identity? What's causing them to waver in this? God, I want to step into the middle of it, and I want to show them the great divide between who those people are trying to serve, where they're striving and there's still no answer. But this God, when we surrender, you show up. You show up in miraculous ways. There's going to be testimonies birthed out of your lives, and the testimony of Jesus is a spirit of prophecy. So whatever your story is could be somebody else's future. So you start telling the stories, and you start living in a different way. And they see pastors who are no longer just they're sitting down the whole time, and then they get up to preach the word. But now they see pastors who's in the middle of worship, and they're just arms stretched wide, and they don't care what else is happening. They're not trying to study their word there. They did that earlier. Now they're just throwing themselves into the arms of God. They're laying down on the altar first before anybody else does. They're not afraid to get on their knees. They're not afraid to bow down. They're not afraid to cry out. You know why it's weird when one person cries out? Because too many of us are afraid to. It wouldn't be so weird if you all did it. And I'm going to stop asking people to do something I'm not willing to do myself. So if I'm going to ask them to stop wavering, I have to stop wavering. I'm coming back to the heart of worship when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you. It's all about you, I'm coming back.